Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 120. That's PEP or the Planet Extra podcast if you're from ABC Legal. And I don't think they're going to sue us anymore for this. That's a long story from a few years back. We're not called the Planet America podcast anymore for legal reasons. This is, however, an offshoot of Planet America on the ABC Australia. Someone told me I should point out.
Oh, right,
Australia,
yeah.
ABC, because we do have some American listeners.
Yes.
You will not find Planet America on ABC America. If only you could. But you can find it on Friday at 8 p.m. on the ABC News channel, ABC Australia News channel, iView or Facebook at ABC Planet America, or on YouTube at the ABC In-Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. And if you're listening, you can also see this podcast on Facebook and YouTube, where you'll see Dr. David Smith.
Yes. Hi, I'm Dr. David Smith. I'm from the United States Study Centre at the University of Sydney. I don't speak for either of those institutions, okay? You are not hearing the opinions of those institutions. In fact, in the case of the University of Sydney, it has no institutional opinions about about anything. So, these are my proprietary opinions that you're hearing here, and I take all responsibility for them. Speaking of taking responsibility for things, I'm severely jet lagged and significantly cognitively compromised today.
When did you for those who don't know, Dr. Dave last week was in America?
Yes.
When did you land back in Australia?
I was in Los Angeles. I got back a couple of days ago, but
it's just taken a while.
It is taking a while.
Okay, so what's your impression of Los Angeles, Dave?
Well, downtown Los Angeles is not only not representative of America, it's not representative of Los Angeles. The whole place looks like it was built about 5 minutes ago. So there's not really any point in claiming that, this is the mood on the ground in America right now, because you don't really get that at the Los Angeles Convention Center and what used to be known as the Staples Center, now Crypto.com Arena. Like a lot of American downtowns, the revitalization was sports-led. It was built around the Staples Center and the LA Lakers dynasty of the early 2000s. So basically the whole city was built around Shaquille O'Neal.
Right.
And anyway, so there's a lot of completely new hotels and things, but I was not staying in one of the new hotels. I was staying in the Westin Bonaventure, which was built between 1974 and 1976. The architect was John C. Portman, for all the architecture fans out there.
How do you know that?
It's it's brutalist on the inside and glass on the outside. It's these 4 glass towers, each of which has its own glass elevator. And I got in there. They let me check in at 10 in the morning, which I was very grateful for. But they said the only room that we've got available is an elevator room. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what the significance of that was. Significance of that was the glass elevator goes right by your window. So it's best to have the curtains shut if you want any kind of privacy. Just a tip for anyone who's staying there.
So the windows aren't outside, they're inside.
No, they are outside, but the lifts also go up the outside.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So it is a remarkable place. Like, it's one of these places, it was a mid-70s vision of what 2020 would look like. But instead it ended up being more of a vision of what the early 80s would look like.
Right. So it's not everyone had a jetpack or something.
No, but it's got a lot of early 80s stuff in there. Like, there's on the 5th floor, which I was roaming around quite a lot, there's a steakhouse, a Japanese steakhouse that looks like it's been closed since 1989. In fact, the only thing open there was a Christian Science reading room. There's this revolving restaurant on the top where you can get all of this 80s stuff like, Oyster Bloody Mary slammers and stuff like that. Right. And it also revolves unusually quickly.
Okay.
Like, if you eat at the revolving restaurant at Centrepoint Tower in Sydney, it takes you 2 hours to revolve. This takes half an hour.
Right.
Half an hour to see the whole of Los Angeles.
So your stomach's revolving as well at the same time.
That's right. But the best bit was somebody, and like I've almost got to applaud this level of just sheer malevolence. Obviously, the last occupant in the room had programmed the digital clock radio alarm to go off at midnight. So on my first night there, suddenly at midnight, And it wasn't just the buzzer alarm either. It was the actual radio alarm. Suddenly, Madonna's Get Into the Groove starts blasting out.
I'd love to know the station that plays Into the Groove at midnight.
And the thing is, like these digital clock radio, I mean, I remember them from my childhood, but I've got no idea how to actually operate one. So, turning the alarm off and making sure that it stayed off was a bit of hand-to-hand combat there happening at midnight in Los Angeles.
Any junk food I should know about?
Not really, because I ate at the same Mexican restaurant about 4 times because there's very little in downtown. I mean, LA itself is a food mecca, but I didn't really stray outside downtown because I was very closely
hit the convenience stores
tied to this conference. This hotel, by the way, was the scene of numerous movies, including True Lies. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course I remember True Lies.
Yeah, the climactic scene takes place in the Western Bonaventure, if you're wondering what it looks like.
I thought you were going to say Die Hard.
No,
pretty cool.
No, but that does take place in another downtown LA skyscraper. But the other one that takes place in the Western Bonaventure is Clint Eastwood's In the Line of Fire, a largely forgotten movie from 1993 in which Clint Eastwood plays a bodyguard who saves someone, I can't remember who, from an assassination attempt. Yeah. That's right. That's what it would be. Yeah, no one's going to make a movie about like
wasn't the county commissioner.
Yeah, get assassinated. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I remember because it's by this guy. Remember who assembles this gun out of these handmade equipment.
Yes,
He's doing it under a table. Yeah. Anyway, so Western Bonaventure, highly recommended.
We probably have enough to talk about. We should probably move on.
Yes.
I do hope that you entertain yourself during those long nights by reading the comments on our YouTube and Facebook feeds of this video because they are becoming very good. I want to thank people for those comments.
I'm sorry about that. I was too busy getting into the groove.
I was getting to the groove by reading the comments. I don't reply to everyone, but in fact, I don't reply to many. But I'm reading them and they're good. I just wanted to highlight a couple of quick ones. Judd noted that, in fact, there was something I said, I think to you. Might have been Melina, but I think it was to you. When I was talking about mugshots, I know it's to Melina. When I was talking about mugshots and I was saying how they have no legal meaning in themselves, how I thought the way people are acting as if he's been convicted from the mugshot. The mugshot is just an indictment.
Yes,
And I said, they're not, they shouldn't be humiliating or have a legal meaning on their own. We treat them like they do.
Yes.
But anyway, Judd made the point that when traveling to America from Australia, one of the visa questions is, have you ever been arrested for a drug-related offence? Not have you ever been convicted of a drug-related offence? And that's a fair point.
Very, very interesting point.
Yes.
By the way, they no longer fingerprint you on your way into Los Angeles Airport.
Maybe they don't fingerprint you because it's so obvious who you are from your hair.
Also, there's no customs anymore. Like nobody actually asks you for a customs declaration,
or
whether you don't have anything to declare. Yeah, I was shocked to see that this is for the first time in 20 years that they've actually made things better rather than worse.
I think all the security might have moved to the Melbourne airport where I was held up for about 2 hours. It was very annoying. That's another podcast. Also, we had a lot of comments about Ukraine. We talked a lot about Ukraine with Elle on the last podcast.
Yep.
A few people expressed suspicion about my theory that no Mitch means no war. Like the Mitch McConnell theory, because like one person, Justin, made the point that EU countries plus EU institutions send almost as much aid as the US.
Yes.
And so, they could theoretically keep it going for a while, even without America, which is a fair point. And I also want to thank all those people who have sent nice messages about What the FAQ, my new show.
Yes.
I do appreciate it. I wouldn't keep pumping it up except for...
How's that going?
Well, the ratings aren't great. That's why
but it's a new show.
And it's on at 9 p.m. and it's like a family show at 9 p.m, which isn't great. Anyway, go watch it on iView. They're the stats that count, okay? So... I shouldn't be telling you that. But, that's the way it works these days. They don't care about TV ratings. They care about streaming ratings.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, you're not going to outrate Bluey, but...
No, we're not. I promise you now... I've seen the numbers. We're not going to be outrating Bluey. But anyway, keep watching on iView. If you're overseas, watch with a VPN. Now, but the main thing I want to talk about to begin with is gratitude. I've already started with the gratitude.
Yep.
There's one person who I'm very grateful for at the moment. It's Brian Kemp.
Oh,
governor
yes.
of Georgia.
Yes.
Now, for those who don't know, he's a conservative. He's a real conservative.
Absolutely.
Very conservative. He's not some northeastern Republican, but he lives in the real world. He doesn't live in fairyland, which is nice. And so while Georgia has some fairly pedantic election security laws, Brian Kemp stands by them and he doesn't second guess them, which is also nice.
Yes.
And by him not budging 1 inch for Trump's election bullshit, he has given permission for other Republicans in Georgia to do the same, which is why there are so many other officials in Georgia, I think, who just say no to this garbage. Like Georgia seems to stand alone as far as this, and I think it's because of Brian Kemp. And that's brave. That is actually brave. People might think, oh, that's not really brave, but he's under real pressure. Like Trump's been at him for 2 years. And the fact that he has an approval rating of 60% is despite that, not because of that. And so, good on him. Roger Stone tweeted out this week that Kemp likely stole his election over Stacey Abrams. That's why he doesn't want us to look too closely at the 2020 election. Jesus. That's kind of garbage he's putting up with. Anyway, and we spoke about the possibility a few pepcasts back about Georgia potentially trying to remove Fani Willis to save Trump. Now that movement's already begun. They're talking about state Republicans are trying to impeach her, essentially. Even though they have a proper legal process in place to do this with a commission board that's meant to do this, but they want to just go around it. There's a guy, it's led by this clown Colton Moore. I'll just introduce you to him.
I mean, and now that we've got 19 people who are facing the rest of their life in prison because they spoke out against an election. I mean, I told one senator, I said, listen, we've got to put our heads together and figure this out. We need to be taking action right now, because if we don't, our constituencies are going to be fighting it in the streets. Do you want a civil war? I don't want a civil war. I don't want to have to draw my rifle. I want to make this problem go away with my legislative means of doing so.
It will surprise nobody to know that this guy is a first-termer.
Yeah.
Yeah, like over the last few years. Anyone that young who talks like that, first termer.
I must say, I do have doubts about whether he could draw with a crayon, let alone draw with a rifle. But and he's not good, and they do get worse. You're right. The first term is always worst. I'm not sure I agree with his logic that you keep society moving.
Not sure that you agree with his logic.
By allowing people to break laws with impunity.
I do love his pronunciation though, of civil, which sounds very close to silver.
Sure. Let's give him that. Let's give him that.
We're
fair on this
He doesn't
podcast.
want a civil war.
No. Anyway, so there's people like that, right? And to impeach Fani Willis, you need to have a special session of the legislature. And Brian Kemp has just said, no deal, be boo, and I'm going to play you him talking about it.
Many of you will recall that in the final weeks of 2020, I clearly and repeatedly said that I would not be calling a special session of the General Assembly to overturn the 2020 election results because such an action would have been unconstitutional. It was that simple. Fast forward today, nearly 3 years later, memories are fading fast. There have been calls by one individual in the General Assembly and echoed outside of these walls by the former president for a special session that would ignore current Georgia law and directly interfere with the proceedings of a separate but equal branch of government. Now, my concerns with the Fulton County District Attorney's handling of this case and the special purpose grand jury have been well documented. We are now seeing what happens when prosecutors move forward with highly charged indictments and trials in the middle of an election. Simply put, it sows distrust and provides easy pickings for those who see the district attorney's action as guided by politics. But let me be clear. We have a law in the state of Georgia that clearly outlines the legal steps that can be taken if constituents believe their local prosecutors are violating their oath by engaging in unethical or illegal behavior. Up to this point, I have not seen any evidence that D.A. Willis's actions or lack thereof warrant action by the Prosecuting Attorney Oversight Commission. But that will ultimately be a decision that the Commission will make. Regardless, in my mind, a special session of the General Assembly to end run around this law is not feasible and may ultimately prove to be unconstitutional. The bottom line is that in the state of Georgia, as long as I'm governor, we're going to follow the law and the Constitution, regardless of who it helps or harms politically. Over the last few years, some inside and outside of this building may have forgotten that, but I can assure you, I have not.
The reason I played all that was because I just wanted to show he does not support the indictment.
No, he doesn't.
He hates the indictment, but he distinguishes between having a view against the indictment, thinking it's unwise, thinking it's a mistake, and doing an end run around the law to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like, he actually believes in upholding the rule of law, which to me, at a time like this, he's the closest thing America's got to a hero at the moment, essentially. He's basically boring, monotone Batman, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I wouldn't call that a boring monotone.
I think
I could listen to that voice all day.
You like that?
Yeah.
You think it's mellifluous? Okay. All right. So I'm grateful for Brian Kemp.
Okay.
What do you want to say about him?
Also worth noting that it's widely believed that Colton Moore wouldn't have had the numbers anyway for an impeachment. Georgia Republicans are not very enthusiastic about it, which that possibly though reflects what you're saying in terms of they follow Kemp's lead on this.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think it'd be an amazing coincidence if just it happened to be one single state where everyone just happened to be different in the Republican Party, unless there's a reason. I think the reason is their leader.
Yeah. Now, in this episode, we do actually have state-level impeachments to talk about that either are happening or probably will happen.
Yes, we do. That's coming up. Oh, what a tease. You're really getting the craft going there, Dave.
Yes.
Okay, well, while you're running hot, you wanted to talk about some of first update about Trump legals. You want to talk about some of the defenses that are being thrown around.
Yes. So a lot of these are coming from John Lauro, who is now just being widely ridiculed. Like, I saw one headline.
Now, you say? Now?
Well, I saw, because it takes a while for people to get to know Trump's lawyers, but people have got to know him very quickly because he's always mouthing off on Fox News. And I saw one headline like, Trump's lawyer is dumber than Trump.
Okay.
So, first there was all the shit last week about how we're going to appeal the trial date.
Yes.
Which it's been widely pointed out
is impossible.
They can't actually appeal the trial date. Yes. So you have a lawyer say, we're going to appeal the trial date.
Sure.
And, some people have tried to find a method behind this that really what it's about is challenging the verdict later on, claiming they didn't have adequate time to prepare, blah, blah, blah. I think it's just more likely that he's not aware that you can't appeal the trial date. But a lot of the pretrial motions that they're talking about, I don't think they've actually filed any yet, but they're talking about them. And Lauro, when he talks in very typically Trumpian terms. Like, we're going to have a very, very detailed motion about executive immunity. And really what he's doing here is talking to Trump supporters, talking to Republicans. This has become very accustomed to this kind of legal discourse where they talk about, we're going to have a very big motion about executive immunity, and we're going to have a very big motion about the First Amendment. It's all stuff to sound impressive to people, while at the same time having absolutely nothing behind it.
Yeah.
What it's really saying is, we know that these motions are going to get rejected, but this just shows that this whole process is corrupt, because you know what the First Amendment is, right? Yeah, well, they're ignoring it. You know what executive immunity is, right? They're ignoring it. And it reminds me of when all of the challenges to 2020 were going on, all of which were completely frivolous, but inevitably would come with like a 200-page document of what that meant was, if you were following right-wing discourse on Facebook, they're saying, oh no, the reason why the courts are throwing all these motions out is because there's too much evidence for them to look at. They just can't possibly review it all, so they're just throwing it out. I think that's the kind of thing that they're going for here. Basically saying there's such overwhelming evidence that all of these charges should be thrown out, but the judges are just ignoring them.
Yeah, I was going to say, this does feel like the Giuliani School of Law. Like to just say all the things that you're going to do and then
Yeah.
Just just none of them actually matter, and most things you don't do either. What makes you think that's necessarily him? I mean, because surely can't you see Trump behind the scenes?
You think
telling
it's
him
just
what to do?
directly coming from Trump?
Yeah, I mean, like, because this guy would know that Trump sacks people really easily.
Yeah. I mean, I do just keep.
I don't know if he's getting paid or not.
I do just keep coming back to the idea that wouldn't Trump be better off with real lawyers?
Of course he would.
Yeah.
He'd be better off with a lot of things. Where have you been for the last 8 years?
And now that it's actually potentially about him going to prison,
I know there's a lot of water under the bridge, but let's just backtrack a bit.
Yes, yeah.
Think back to 2015, the situation Trump was in.
Yeah.
The reputation he had.
Yes.
The way that he sort of crossed party lines originally, he had unlimited media attention.
Yeah.
He could have been, with just a little bit of sense,
Yes.
the most popular president ever.
Yeah, he probably could
He
have been.
could have gone. He honestly could have. He honestly could. It would not have been hard.
Yeah.
Like he was in the perfect position.
Yes.
And he did a lot of unadvisable things, shall we say? And he's now where he is.
Yeah. So anyway, most of these pre-trial motions are unlikely to succeed, to put it mildly. I think the analysis that I've read suggests that the executive immunity is the one with the best chance, but we've already discussed why we don't think it's got much of a chance.
Yeah, no,
when
I
it
don't
comes to
think so.
When it comes to Trump, which is that he wasn't actually acting in the office of president.
No.
When he was acting as someone who was campaigning.
He was talking about every election except for the ones that the federal government is in charge of.
Yes.
He was obsessed with state elections, and the reason why was because they're the ones that control the presidential part.
Yeah.
But,
Anyway, but yeah, we are obviously going to continue to see this defense that our friend Colton Moore just put forward, which is that, oh, no, they're just speaking out against an election, protesting against election.
yes.
Yeah, which we've already discussed why there's a difference between that and trying to pressure officials into changing election results.
We have indeed. And we'll talk about it more.
Yes, we will.
Undoubtedly,
Yep.
over the years. Mm-hmm. Do you have any, I'm just running through all the topics that you've missed.
Yes.
Do you have anything to say about the Mitch McConnell stuff? Because it looks like he's going to hold on. There was a bit of concern there for a while that they were going to do the numbers on him. It turns out that not fortunately, this is how he's organised it. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
The people who are most likely to challenge Mitch McConnell are his strongest allies. And no one wants Rick Scott to be the Senate minority leader.
No.
So there's a challenger issue.
You
for
could
Mitch
shorten
McConnell.
that sentence. No one wants Rick Scott.
You probably could. There are still. he's still got a minus 52% approval rating according to the Economist YouGov polls. That means his unfavorables are 52 points higher than his favorables.
Yeah.
Trump's still angling for him. He hates him.
Yep.
The Liberals still hate him because of Merrick Garland.
Yes.
Like he doesn't have a lot of friends. His standards of chaos aren't nearly what today's Republicans demand.
No.
I mean, just look at our mate Tommy Tuberville. That's not Mitch McConnell's style.
No, it's not.
Like he doesn't make the whole place grind to a halt. He just picks off the stuff which he cares about.
Gotta say, I mean, how ungrateful is Trump? Trump should be kissing a photo of Mitch McConnell every night.
I'm glad you didn't say kissing actually Mitch McConnell.
Because Mitch McConnell is the only reason why he got to be president in the first place, for the same reason that Liberals hate him, by holding open that Supreme Court seat.
That's true.
That gave Conservatives who were doubtful about Trump, and there actually still were quite a few of them in 2016, something to vote for.
And I can add to that, Mitch McConnell is the only reason that he can even run for president now. Because if Mitch McConnell turned against Trump at that second impeachment, they would have gotten enough numbers to actually disqualify him.
Yeah.
So Trump should be very grateful.
He should be.
He's not. That's one more ill-advised choice from Trump. Do you have anything to say about the potential impending shutdown?
No,
nothing on that. That's fine. I'm happy to just roll right past that. That is next week. They're coming back to try. I should just clarify if people don't know what I'm talking about. Next week they're on holidays at the moment, Congress. Next week they come back not to pass a budget, even though they have 2 weeks to pass the budget. Mm-hmm. No, it's to pass a continuing resolution to give them 3 more months.
Yes,
to pass something like a budget. There's a lot of unhelpful people that as usual, the unhelpful people are best represented by Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes.
Who is said point blank she is not going to vote for a continuing resolution unless they defund Ukraine war, they open an impeachment inquiry, they eliminate all COVID mandates, and they stop the weaponization of. They basically just drop all the charges against Trump.
I
Essentially.
am still convinced she is the most likely vice presidential candidate for Trump.
I think that after the loss of Carrie Lake, I've become more in that camp.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's probably going to be a shutdown, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting that they have. This is actually a point John made on the Planet America, which I was going to save for this one, but I'll use it anyway. Which is that it looks like they're going to have this impeachment inquiry soon. The pressure's really building on McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy, he foolishly tried to run the line that they need to keep the government open to have an impeachment, which is really dumb because even these people know, even Marjorie Taylor Greene knows that he is the one that decides what stays open during a shutdown in Congress. So they then go, hang on, Kevin, are you going to stop us having an impeachment during the shutdown? So now we're going to have a situation where there is a shutdown and an impeachment. And people are going to go, hang on, you're not mailing our social security checks while you're having an impeachment.
Yeah.
Well, you should get back to bloody work and get us back in.
That's right.
It's such a terrible play.
After the 300th picture of, Hunter Biden's penis gets projected into Congress by Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Possibly onto the Wall-Out Hotel you just stayed at.
There's only 1,700 of these to go. People might be beginning to wonder about the priorities.
So, but look, if you have anything to say about that, I'll just leave that for the impeachment because we got a lot more to say about that's coming real soon.
Yeah.
We've got months to talk about Hunter Biden and so forth. So let's just leave that for now. As you can see, I know how much we've got to talk about. So I'm just racing along. But I know you want to do an update on Wisconsin. Now, it's not really an update for you. It's just Wisconsin. I talked about this with Elle on the last podcast, but Dave obviously wasn't here because Dave was going up and down a glass elevator, possibly without his clothes on. So Dave... You want to talk about Wisconsin? Talk about Wisconsin. Let's go.
Okay. So, this potential impeachment of newly elected Supreme Court judge.
Do you want to reset that just so people know what you're talking about with that impeachment?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. No, you do it.
Yes. Okay. So, recently elected Supreme Court Judge Deb Posnewski.
One of our commenters told me because I completely messed this up last time. It's Protasewicz.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Deb Protasewicz.
Yes.
God, I really am jet lagged. I got all the consonants wrong. Okay.
Even I did better than you.
Deb Protasewicz.
I did badly.
Yes. So she won this election by 11 points.
Yes.
Which is pretty significant. My theory about that is that this was basically Wisconsin's abortion election. All of these other states have had these elections, which are either directly about abortion or proxy elections about abortion, as was the case in Ohio. This looks very much like what one of those was. And she said in the course of that election campaign that Wisconsin's election maps were rigged.
Yeah.
Which
they are.
Yeah, they completely are. That's just a statement of fact.
Yeah.
And that, and she made her position on abortions very clear. Now, in the perhaps slightly hyperbolic words of one newspaper, the case challenging the election maps poses an existential threat to the Republican majority in Wisconsin.
That seems a bit much.
Well, so they currently have a 29-seat majority in the House and a 2/3. They've got exactly 2/3 of the Senate.
Yeah.
This is in basically a 50-50 state.
Oh, yeah. It endangers their supermajority for sure. But I'm sure they can win an election again at some point in time.
Yeah. So, So Wisconsin, members of the Wisconsin House now are moving to impeach
Protasewicz.
Okay, so you might...
On what grounds?
Well, this is the thing.
Yes.
You might be thinking, don't you have to impeach a judge for something they've done while in office?
Yeah.
And...
Can I read for
Yes,
you
yeah,
what
yeah.
the Wisconsin Constitution says?
Yes, yeah.
It says that what you can impeach them for is corrupt conduct in office or for the commission of a crime or misdemeanor.
Yes.
None of them are failure to recuse yourself.
No.
But anyway, go on.
This is the thing. They want her to recuse herself from the MAPS case and the abortion case because she talked about her opinions about it in the campaign. Now, it's been widely pointed out there's no precedent in Wisconsin for judges recusing themselves from cases just because they've talked about it before, such as the previous conservative justice who said that Christianity was the correct religion and that all other religions were wrong, and nonetheless did not recuse himself from cases that were highly relevant.
While we're
to that.
running hot on that fellow, his name's Hagedorn.
Yeah, Hagedorn.
Can I tell you my favourite one example of his?
Yes.
Which was, that was good, but
Yeah,
my
yeah.
favourite one was where
Yeah.
he wrote, the idea that homosexual behaviour is different than bestiality as a constitutional matter is unjustifiable.
Yes.
And he was writing that about striking down anti-sodomy laws at all. I'm not talking
Yes.
gay marriage here. I'm talking about just gayness being
Yes.
legal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He then refused to recuse himself over gay rights cases.
Yes.
No problems.
No problems.
No
at all.
problems.
No. Now, the other thing that they're upset about is that when Liberals got the majority in Wisconsin, they immediately moved to strip the Chief Justice of a lot of their powers, including the powers around which cases are going to be heard, which is, something of a power grab. I will admit that. By the way, there's an irony to that, which is that for most of the last 20 years or 15 years, it's actually been a Liberal who's been the Chief Justice, presiding over a Conservative majority. So they're probably pissed off that they didn't think of that first. But the thing is that by stripping the Chief Justice of their power, they've given these Conservative justices more time to pursue their true calling in life, which is mouthing off to right-wing radio hosts. Wisconsin must have the highest proliferation of right-wing radio hosts per capita anywhere in the country. Like every time a new one gets talked about in the media, it's someone else I've never heard of before. It's always a new one. And so we always know what the opinions of these right-wing justices are because they are always talking to right-wing radio hosts. Anyway, so you might not think that there are any grounds for this impeachment. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
No, everyone seems to just assume it's going to happen.
Everyone seems to assume that it is going to happen at this point. Now, with a 29-seat majority in the House, that is definitely a shoo-in. The Senate's going to be interesting because it is like they have exactly two-thirds of the vote, which is what they need. So you would only need one defection in the Senate for her not to be removed, which that seems possible, but so far nobody on the Republican side has suggested that they won't vote for removal, although there are people who are refusing to, comment, but that would probably just be a sensible move in terms of keeping your powder dry. Of course, most people just prefer to mouth off on right-wing radio, though. So this could definitely happen. Now, the only recourse that Democrats really have is they have talked about they are going to spend a lot of money to target legislators who impeach, basically with the threat that you are just going to absolutely pay for this at the next election, which seems plausible given the way that Wisconsin's been going in the vote recently. Given that Protasiewicz won by 11 points last time around, you can imagine that there'd be quite a lot of outrage at the next election. And apparently some Republicans privately are pretty worried about what the political consequences could be.
Yeah, I was going to make a point about that people with gerrymandering, what they often forget is that, yes, when there's a 50-50 election and it's gerrymandered, then you have a great advantage. But if it's a 55-45 election or a 60-40, you get
potentially in trouble.
Yeah, you get destroyed.
Yes,
because a lot of these seats break at the same time.
Yes,
and it's just outside the normal range.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's just impossible to gerrymander so that you win everything by 30 points.
Yeah.
So they are taking a risk.
Yes.
If they push Wisconsin too far, they might hand a supermajority to the Democrats.
But if you're scratching your head about this, just to put it very simply, the most common gerrymandering technique is to make sure that the other side's seats are won by the biggest majorities possible, but that your own seats are won by the smallest majorities possible, so that you can win as many of them as that's why if there's a wave election, suddenly you're screwed. But when the question of the replacement judge, so if she were impeached, were removed, the election for the replacement would be the April election, which is the Republican primary.
Yes.
So there have been these reports saying Democrats are worried about that because obviously Republican primary, you're going to get a lot of Republican voters out. Democrats are not going to have a competitive primary at the same time. I'm not so sure, though. We just seem to be living in an age of very motivated electors around issues like this. I don't think that Democrats are going to stay home any more than, the clever tactic of the Ohio Republicans trying to hold an election in the middle of summer to get this,
the Ohio one,
to get that piece of shit through. That didn't work. Also, if it is an April primary, Trump's going to have the nomination sewn up.
I was about to make the same point.
By then.
It's over by April.
Yeah. So it's not, sure, although counterpoint to that, we did see in 2020 enormous numbers of Republicans voting in primary elections that were not in any way competitive. Like, they really came out to vote for Trump against Bill Weld.
I reckon, you make a good point. We'll see. Who knows?
Yeah.
But all I would say is there's at least a chance, a considerable chance, I think, that the primaries are going to be after the first few.
Yes.
If Trump just slaughters the first few primaries after Super Tuesday, they're going to become a massive afterthought because his trials are going to be going.
Yeah.
Like, there's a very real chance that, then maybe they're going to want to speak through their trials, through the primaries.
Yeah.
But there's a very real chance they might just stay home and not give a shit.
Right. Yeah.
We'll see.
If the context of that election is it's a meaningless primary, but Trump's in the middle of a criminal trial.
Yeah.
That could you could absolutely get a Democratic backlash. So even though everyone seems to be assuming that the impeachment is on, the consequences of it could be pretty unpredictable.
Yeah.
Or pretty predictable.
Yes.
Yeah.
That covers it. That
covers it, yes. Yeah.
Nice one.
This is the hedging hour.
Well, I'm not going to be hedging on this next bit.
Chaz is not hedging.
No, I have an update on COVID.
Yep.
A couple of things. First of all, China, as we all know, ended its strict COVID zero policy in December 2022.
Yes.
There are some interesting studies coming out of that.
Yep.
We knew there were some pretty extreme figures of deaths associated with it, but now we're getting the numbers. From an independent study published in Journal of American Medicine Network, 1.9 million excess deaths in the 2 months after COVID zero ended, and that's just people over 30.
Yeah.
There have been less than 7 million deaths worldwide in total attributed to COVID up to now.
Yeah.
So that's 2 months. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. The another study which was interesting. Now this is from Cato, so not so independent.
No.
But Cato, as far as these think tanks go, I think
they do take scholarship seriously.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think they're usually fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
I think it's at least worth considering what they have to say.
Yeah.
And the reason why I put that precursor in is because it's about the Sweden question.
Oh, the Sweden question.
Which obviously would suit Cato right down to their little cotton socks. Because they're a bit of a sort of, they're on the libertarian side of the conservative, intelligentsia.
Sweden is every libertarian's favourite social democracy.
Well, at least that's more realistic now than it used to be. About Sweden was every Bernie Sanders socialist ideal country and they go, but Sweden stopped being social democrats so long ago. Anyway, excess death rates.
Yes.
From 2020 to 2022. And I think excess death rates is the best measure as opposed because different countries measure COVID deaths in different ways. They ended up being smaller in Sweden than any other European country as a percentage. They're less than half of America's. It was 4.4% in Sweden. The European average was 11.1%. Now, Cato interpreted that as voluntary behaviour works best because that was a Swedish model. I actually interpret it differently. And I'll tell you why.
How do you interpret it, Jez?
Well, what I would say is I would say you need to look at all the figures.
Yeah.
And I can't help noticing that down the bottom of the table are three countries
Yep.
Sweden 4.4%, Norway 5%, and Denmark 5.4%.
Right.
Who all had very different models
Yes.
of dealing with COVID.
Yeah.
So the way I interpret it is the Scandinavian people are the best. It's not about voluntary, it's about being Scandinavian.
Right.
I'm not saying that they're super people. I'm saying that what happened with Sweden is they didn't have their government tell them to lock down. They just locked down by themselves.
That's right.
Well, that's what the Cato guys are saying. They're going. The Cato guys aren't conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
They're saying when you don't force people to lock down, they're more likely to lock
Yes.
down voluntarily.
Yeah.
And I say yes if you're Sweden.
Yes.
But if you're America,
Yes.
that's not the case.
No.
The Americans are a bit more obstreperous than the Swedes are.
Yeah.
Like, and if you look at the mobile data, the way they moved around, Swedes actually did lock down even more arguably
Yes.
than other countries
Yeah.
did, and for longer. So it's no surprise that they did pretty well out of it.
Yes.
But once again, I don't think it's because of libertarian values. I think it's because Scandinavians are a society that have a very community kind of vibe about
Yeah,
it.
look, usually I'm very skeptical of culturalist arguments like the one that you've just made, but I'm not going to dispute that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not sure what the explanation there could be
Yes.
because all three of them had different models.
Yeah.
And Norway was probably one of the harshest lockdowns
Yes,
in
yeah.
Europe. So that was right next to Sweden, and they had very similar results.
Yeah.
But also I would say that I should note that and the Norway Public Health Agency basically said the same thing. Not the Scandinavian thing, but they said other countries managed to delay some deaths, but now 3 years after we end up at the same place, which is true. But at least if you're in Scandinavia. But I would also just note, of course, there's the economic outcomes as well, where Sweden did end up better off. The Eurozone economy was 2.1% smaller than projected after the pandemic. Sweden's actually grew. It was 0.4% larger, and that was with less stimulus and with kids not falling behind school either. So once again, wonderful for Sweden. I think Sweden gets a big tick in hindsight, but I don't think that's a model for the rest of the world.
Right,
Because the rest of the world is not Sweden.
No.
But anyway. Just thought I'd raise that.
Yes.
Because we talked about Sweden endlessly 3 years ago.
Yeah, we did talk about it.
We really did. We talked about them an awful lot.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to revisit those episodes. By the way, I mean,
Yes.
there is another major wave of COVID happening in the US
Yeah.
at the moment.
I mean, it's hard to measure the waves
Yeah.
now because people don't get tested as much.
Yeah.
And it's just...
The way that I measure it is just the number of Americans I know who are suddenly getting COVID, and
Fair enough.
it's going up again. And in
the hospitalizations aren't going up so much.
yes,
yet.
yeah. No, it's clearly a different thing now. Yeah, and like in Los Angeles, probably about 5% of people were wearing masks. So it is just it's such a different thing now from what it was.
Another update is I talked with Elle on the last podcast about Medicare, about the negotiations in Medicare beginning with the 10 drugs that were mentioned. I don't know if you have anything to add to. I know you don't know what we talked about.
I've got plenty of drugs to add to that, but no.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to do just a couple of updates on things we talked about because I got a lot of feedback from the best commenters in YouTube, the pet commenters. A few didn't appreciate me being so blasé about psoriasis. I did a bit of kind of psoriasis, whatever. And skin condition, that's okay. I didn't quite put it like that. But I'm putting it like that now just because I'm contrasting with the commenters.
Right.
One guy called Guy said he made the point psoriatic arthritis is extremely serious. I'll just quote him. I don't know if it can kill you, but there are days where you wish it could. When we have a flare, it's chronic pain and chronic fatigue bundled together. I'm at 2 years and counting with 3 consecutive pain-free days being the best stretch so far. So
sorry to hear that, Guy.
I am sorry to hear that as well, Guy. And I obviously defer to Guy on that.
Yeah.
I also had a doctor called Pseudonym.
A doctor called Pseudonym.
Dr. Pseudonym, who also said that psoriatic arthritis is very serious, but the Dr. Pseudonym also suggested I check out Australia's PBS prices to compare to America, which I thought was a great idea.
Yes.
So I did. I called up a few pharmacies, and here is the comparison for the 10 drugs covered by Medicare versus PBS.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind, these are what the Australian government pays versus what the American government pays.
Yep.
the people pay less.
Yes.
In America, if you have the right level of insurance and co-pays and all the rest, you either don't pay for them or pay a lot less.
Yes.
In Australia, you pay $19 American or $30 for each of these.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So Eliquis, I shouldn't even try to pronounce these. Eliquis, America, $561, Australia, $58.07. Jardiance, America, $570, Australia, $39.05. Xarelto, $542, America, $42.47 Australia. Januvia, $586, America, $27.88 Australia. Forxiga, $549 America, $37 Australia. Entresto, $545 America, $122.94 Australia. Enbrel, $1,762 American versus $540 Australian. Oh, by the way, did I mention these are all converted into American dollars, so it's like for like as well.
Yeah, yep.
So I'm not screwing anyone over here. Imbruvica, $13,546, $5,352 Australian, and Stellera, $25,497 American versus $2,524 Australian. Just in case you're wondering.
I just want to know how they came up with these names.
I know. Isn't it incredible?
These look like names that Shakespeare came up with, nah, that sucks.
For
Nah, that's stupid. Nah, Prospero sounds a lot better than that.
Than Entresto.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Dave's just having a look over my table here for those who are listening.
Enbrel. Nah, we'll call him Fortinbras instead. Eliquis. How about Iago?
Shakespeare's worst ever name.
Yes.
There we are. That's going to go into the blurb as well.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to add is just I saw a reaction which I thought was interesting from Ben Shapiro. Yeah, he interests me sometimes. I know he doesn't interest you much, Dave.
No. What, he reacted to you?
No. If he was smart, he would.
Yeah.
No, but the Medicare thing. He's got his own theory about this, which is because he's on team stifling innovation. About when you reduce these prices, what you're doing is stifling innovation, and then there's going to be less drugs for everyone. Right? That's the logic that you hear on the right. What he says is there's another solution.
What's that?
Aggressively make other countries pay more for their fair share than Americans, because at the moment Americans pay so much more and no one else pays more. Why don't we make the foreign countries, the overseas countries, pay more? Then we can pay less, and then there wouldn't be stifling innovation. That's the Shapiro solution. Do you have any response? Because I've got a response.
How does that even require a response?
Well, I have no answer to you there. But.
Yeah. Like his whole shtick really is just saying stuff that sounds clever to the fucking dumbest people on earth. Like,
I'm not going to dispute you.
Yeah. Every time you mention something that he says. Anyway.
Nevertheless, I will respond.
Okay.
That's Dave's response.
Yeah.
My response is, number one, how do you do that? How do you make other countries pay more for drugs?
Yeah.
Because if you're charging them more than they want to pay, they won't buy your drugs.
Yes. Like, does he know why they pay less? It's not because drug companies give them away.
No, it's not charity.
For less. It's because their governments negotiate with them.
Yeah.
So something the US government has been legally unable to do for years.
And the fact is, if they want to charge Zambia $25,000 for Stellera, Zambia will say no thanks.
Yeah. And
the people in Zambia will they're not going to have a revolt. Yeah. They'll either just not even know about it, or if they're rich enough to make a big deal about it, they'll travel to America to get their Stellera. But the fact is, it's not going to be any skin off the Zambian government's nose that they're not paying $25,000 for Stellera.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how you do that. But what I would say is, to the extent that you can do that, you do it exactly the way that the Biden administration is doing it, which is you get America to pay less.
Yes.
And then if the pharmaceutical companies think they can squeeze more out of overseas countries, then they will. They will. They're not a charity. They will try as hard as they can. If it's possible to squeeze more out of other countries, then they will succeed.
Yeah.
If it's not possible, then they will not. But you can't incentivize them to squeeze more out of other countries more, than if you reduce how much America is paying for it. So in actual fact, I think that...
I love how you're explaining like just the most basic principles of capitalism to Mr. Right-Wing podcast star here.
I'm the...
Not that he's listening.
No, he's definitely not.
Yeah,
okay, I am the podcast libertarian, so that's kind of my job, isn't it?
yeah.
To explain capitalism to people.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough for the Medicare, unless you have anything else to say about that.
No.
Okay. Now we're into the Dave zone. He's already teased it. Impeachment time, Dave.
Okay,
State
so
impeachment
we
time.
have talked already about one impeachment that's not going to happen, one impeachment that seems very likely to happen. Here's an impeachment that is actually going on at the moment. We're in day 3 of this. So this is the impeachment of Ken Paxton, who is Texas's Attorney General, although he's been suspended from that since May. Now, Ken Paxton, he was elected 8 years ago, and he has actually been under both federal investigation and state indictment ever since he was elected for securities fraud.
Is that because of the weaponization of politics, Dave?
Oh,
in Texas?
Well, this is the thing. This was before that term became cool.
Yeah.
Like that was 2015.
Yeah.
That was before Trump came down the escalator.
Paxton's the OG.
Yeah. Now, there are some conservatives who doubt those charges, and the fact that it's been going for 8 years, well, I don't really know the ins and outs of that. But the thing about this impeachment is Texas has a heavily Republican legislature.
Yes.
Like heavily Republican. I'm not sure.
Elephant heavy.
I don't know what the numbers are in the House, but in the Senate where the trial is taking place now, it's 19-12 Republican.
Yeah.
He was impeached 120 to 23 in the House.
That sounds very weaponized to me, Dave.
And the House committee that came up with the articles of impeachment, that is definitely Republican led.
Yeah.
So what we are looking at here is a Republican being impeached by Republicans. And just looking at the early stages of this Senate trial where, there have been all kinds of motions to dismiss the articles of impeachment, bearing in mind Paxton will need 9 Republicans to vote against it in order to hang on. So far, only 6 Republicans have been voting consistently for these motions to dismiss.
Okay.
So that might be a good indicator of how things are going. A little wrinkle to this, we might add, his wife is in the Senate, but she is...
is she one of the 6?
No, she is barred from... understandably barred from being a juror in this trial, despite the fact that one of the charges is a bribery charge based on the fact that he benefited from a scummy real estate developer employing his mistress.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe you should talk us through.
Oh, okay. Yes. So
the
all of this
details.
revolves around this real estate developer called Nate Paul.
Okay.
Who is, also accused of all kinds of misdeeds. Basically, it's all around Paxton.
Sounds like a white rapper.
Nate Paul, yeah.
Yes.
The lost Paul brother.
Yeah.
It's basically revolves around Ken Paxton protecting this Paul. And there was some testimony today by members of Paxton's staff who were rather shocked when Paxton took them on a little ride to Nate Paul's house while they were investigating Nate Paul. And then Nate Paul took them to a Tex-Mex restaurant in Austin and told them all about his complaints about how the Attorney General's department was handling his case. There are all these staff of Ken Paxton sort of thinking, I didn't know how this was how the Attorney General's office was supposed to be functioning. Like, while we're investigating this guy, the Attorney General is taking us to a Tex-Mex restaurant so that he can complain about our conduct with. So that's the sort of level, that's the level that we're talking about here of just sheer egregiousness.
Yeah.
And this might explain why Republicans are so eager to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not just corrupt, it's embarrassing. Anyway.
Also, I should add as well,
Yeah.
just on the Republican versus Republican sort of
Yes.
blue on blue fighting here,
Yeah.
that that there's also a factional issue here.
Well, there is.
Like Ken Paxton's very much new school Republican.
Yes,
and there are
yes.
plenty of old school Republicans still in Texas.
There are plenty of, or at least sort of semi-old school Republicans around. So, Rick Perry is very, very down on Ken Paxton. But So are most Republicans. But, of course, the complicating factor in all of this is that Paxton has spent the last 8 years making his name as the biggest Trump superfan in Texas. Yeah. And so he was the one who you might remember filed the ridiculous lawsuit trying to sue Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, I think Georgia and Arizona as well, claiming that because they had changed election procedures as a result of COVID, that their votes were undermining the will of the people of Texas. Yeah, it was an incredibly convoluted thing. The Supreme Court declined to hear it. Of course, Clarence Thomas said that he would. I think Alito said that he would as well. But yeah, the rest of them were just like, no. So as a result of that, Trump's been posting free Ken Paxton on Truth Social, which is kind of an offense.
It's the new Nelson Mandela.
Also clearly an offense that Trump is not putting a huge amount of effort into. But Steve Bannon is putting a lot of effort into it.
Steve Bannon likes him?
Yeah, Steve Bannon loves him. Okay. And he's like, Texas Republicans have to understand this is not just about Texas.
Well, why doesn't Steve Bannon give his mistress a job then, if he loves him so much? Two birds, one stone. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, so... And Paxton has been trying to do the Trump thing of, rallying the people to his defense. And apparently there have been like 10 people turning up every day in, free Paxton T-shirts.
Oh, God.
It's, sitting in the gallery through these proceedings. But it doesn't look like it's going very well for Paxton.
Well, I heard, now, and I must put a disclaimer in here. I've read about this for like 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
I really don't know much about this.
Yes.
I did a token read of just a couple of articles just because I knew Dave wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so maybe you know more about this than me. This thing I'm trying to say. I read that there may be a factor that apparently there's some big wig donor called Tim Dunn.
Okay.
Who apparently is just a big fan of Ken Paxton.
Oh, of course.
And he basically has his people. They're in his little network.
Yeah.
And they are threatening to lavishly fund primary challenges
Right.
for any Republican senators who vote against Paxton. And I'm wondering if that might be an issue or not, or if that's just something that in an article someone talked about.
He might have to fund a lot of challenges.
That kind of threat only works if there's only a small number.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it's just looking at the way that things have gone recently in other places. You can promise that kind of retaliation, but Trump promised it in Georgia, but none of his primary challenges went anywhere against. So I don't think the Save Ken Paxton cause is that popular in Texas, regardless of if Trump and Bannon are behind him. Anyway, of course, there's a celebrity lawyer involved who is Tony Busby. Yeah, Tony Busby is a very high-profile defense lawyer in Texas. He's a former Democrat. He actually ran for office as a Democrat in 2004, 2005, but then swung behind Trump, whatever. But he has been spending his day, this is day 3, he did not feature in it at all, except he was posting on Instagram the complaint that the TV cameras were making his skin look unnaturally orange. So, that once again, why don't people just hire real lawyers?
Yeah.
Like, surely there's a market for real lawyers rather than... Anyway.
People who do that.
Clearly, I'm beating my head against a brick wall.
Now, just before you... Like, I don't know where you're going to go with this from here. But
not. I mean, I don't actually have much further to go.
That's okay. Well, what I want to ask you, I don't know. Once again, I don't know how much you know and how much you don't know. But we sort of brushed over what the actual impeachment's about. Like you were saying about this real estate guy, Nate Paul, the white rapper.
Yeah.
The real estate guy's how he was trying to. Paxton got him to try and give his mistress a job.
Yes.
Right. But what's like?
First of all,
what's the quid pro quo here?
Trying to shield Paxton from this investigation.
Yep.
Tipping Paxton off about an FBI raid on his house.
So Paxton tipped Nate Paul off.
Yeah, Paxton. Sorry,
presumably Nate Paul doesn't know much about
Sorry, yeah, Paxton tipped Nate Paul off about
Ethics,
that.
real estate.
Yeah, Paxton was trying to shield him from this investigation. There's another element to it as well, which I'm struggling to remember because the jet lag is kicking. That's right. Firing whistleblowers.
Right.
So a lot of people within the AG's department were expressing concerns about the shit that was going on, like having lunches with Nate Paul, where Nate Paul told them what they were doing wrong.
Right, okay.
When whistleblowers started emerging in 2020, they also started getting fired at a pretty rapid rate. So that is part of the charges.
Okay,
as well.
I do believe as well, from my brief reading, this is not about the charge, but part of the fun is apparently Paxton behaved in particularly shady ways trying to cover up his tracks.
Yes, he
like
did.
Like apparently he ditched his own security detail for meetings. He used a burner phone.
Yeah.
He used secret email accounts, an alias on his Uber account. Like he went full The Wire.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. So which makes it more fun as well.
Yeah. So anyway, it looks like he's in trouble, and
Couldn't have been a nicer guy.
yeah, I mean, David French was talking very hopefully in the New York Times about how perhaps this is the beginning of a rebellion against Trump. I don't think it is. But he was, because he was showing that Texas Republicans were willing to buck the ultra MAGA line but the thing is, we've actually seen plenty of instances of that happening before, and it doesn't change the overall kind of momentum.
David French, for those who don't know, is a commentator. He's like a Christian Republican commentator who is he's kind of like the cute little bunny of the Republican Party. And the last 8 years has just been wave after wave of myxomatosis.
Yeah.
He just gets his head just crushed in every couple of weeks. And I can see him getting little bunny ears flopping up.
Didn't he actually run against Trump?
Yeah.
In 2016.
But he had no delusions. He wasn't running against Trump because he thought he was going to win.
No.
He was running against Trump because he thought someone should run against Trump.
Yes.
And because he wanted to speak. He wanted to speak for what I just referred to as old school republicanism.
Yes.
And he did speak for him. Just no one heard him.
Yeah.
but anyway, good luck, David French, in that cause. Do you have anything else to say about Paxton?
No.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of. I mean, I'm calling these all updates, but these are just kind of topics.
Yeah.
The 14th Amendment we've discussed before, but we need to discuss again.
Okay.
And the reason we need to discuss again is because it's now becoming a reality.
Yes.
The cases are now in court.
Okay.
And just to recap for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says that no person shall ... hold any office ... who having previously taken an oath ... to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. We talked at length about the questions of was January 6th an insurrection or a rebellion? And you were the view it was, I was of the view it wasn't.
Yep.
We then talked about did Trump engage in that or give aid or comfort to the enemies of that? You were in favor of that. I was kind of borderline, but we talked about it in theory. Okay, so now let's talk about the reality because let's leave aside the actual legal. We've talked about that.
Yes.
Let's talk about the other aspects, which are kind of interesting. There are two groups spearheading a lot of these lawsuits.
Yep.
One is, and there's a lot of lawsuits going on at the moment.
Yes.
One is CREW, which is Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington.
Yep.
The other is FSFP, which is Free Speech for People. I have no idea what they are. But CREW was not a left-wing organization before Trump.
Yeah.
They seem like a left-wing organization now because they're so anti-Trump.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is because Trump gives them a lot to talk about.
Yes.
when they're talking about responsibility and ethics.
Yeah.
But anyway, those two groups are behind basically all the lawsuits.
This other one, Free Speech for People.
Never heard them before. But
it reminds me of Up With People. So Up With People was the troupe that used to perform at Super Bowls.
Oh, yeah.
Because at halftime, before they actually became these fully professional concerts featuring people that people knew.
These people like throwing cheerleaders in the air. Is that the idea?
It
Up
was
with
that, but
people?
well, yeah, it was relentlessly positive. So
okay.
this was satirized on The Simpsons as "Hooray for Everything."
Gotcha.
Like, yeah, now it's those, go-getting kids from "Hooray for Everything."
Yeah.
That was based on, I think their last Super Bowl performance was in 1985 or something. It was very early on, but just free speech for people. That just sounds like up with people to me.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
Even if they weren't smart about their name, they're smart about their strategy, which is both these organizations are aware of the fact it's not going to be easy to get this up.
No.
And so they've taken advantage of the fact that there were a very large number of people in January 6th to just challenge everyone.
Wow. Okay.
Like they've been at it for a year.
Yeah.
They've been challenging as many people as they possibly can, and every single time it's in a different state, in a different way, using a different argument, seeing which ones work, which ones don't. It's basically legal evolution. So it's saying survival of fittest essentially.
Yes.
So they've challenged Andy Biggs, they've challenged Paul Gozer, they've challenged Marjorie Taylor Greene, they've challenged Mark Finchen. Remember the guy from Arizona?
Yeah, I remember him.
They've challenged Madison Cawthorn. Madison Cawthorn was the one they actually got the furthest in, because if you recall, he was involved in the court case before he lost his primary. That was these guys. And they first of all, they challenged him under the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
There was an injunction placed on them from not having that case.
Yeah.
They then appealed, and then the Court of Appeals actually overturned the injunction. So it looked like they were going to have that case, but then he lost his he lost his primary, so it didn't matter. And so they've been going on, and they actually had success. There was one official. I referred to county officials officials before. That was the guy that they got up. There was this guy called Kai Hogan, I think, off the top of my head. I don't have it written down here. He was a New Mexico like like county police guy or whatever. He was a nobody, but they got him disqualified based on the 14th Amendment.
Wow.
And then he challenged it to the state Supreme Court and he lost the appeal.
Oh, okay.
So that was success.
Yes.
And so they're trying to apply what the lessons to try and avoid the legal problems. And there's a lot of legal problems. So let me talk to you about the legal problems briefly. None of these have to do with what we talked about last time. They're not about whether it's insurrection or whatever. Those are the merits of the claim. This is pre-merits.
Yep.
The problem is that before you even start, you need standing for a case, right?
Yes.
Which means that you need to have some skin in the game, essentially. Right? You can't just be a rando. There are states that allow any citizen to have standing for an electoral challenge.
Right. Yeah.
There are other states that don't. They've been trying this out.
So the ones that don't, they say you actually have to have been harmed in some way. But okay, yep.
And so an example of that is another candidate, like say Chris Christie, or something like that.
Yep.
You might think that's the only impediment. That's not the only impediment.
I certainly didn't think it was the only impediment.
Yeah, you also need to have a claim that's not too early and not too late. Because if you go there too early, they go, well, they haven't even won the primary yet. How do we know? If you go there too late, you go, well, it's too close to the election.
Let's call this the Goldilocks criteria.
Exactly. And of course, if you're a court that wants to avoid ruling on this, you'll make that Goldilocks zone as tight as you possibly can get away with.
Yes.
There also needs to be an appropriate legal mechanism in the state to evaluate the qualifications of candidates, because not every state has one. For example, in New Hampshire, the legal the mechanism they use to evaluate candidates is the candidate's word.
Yeah,
that's it.
Given that they have to fill up a state legislature of like 450 people in the state of New Hampshire, which is tiny.
Yeah.
If they had any criteria at all, they'd never be able to fill it up.
Yeah, no, their criteria is raise your hand. But
who hasn't done this yet?
Yeah, but there are also opportunities in certain states. Yes. They have very, very wide windows. Like, for instance, Pennsylvania seems likely. Any person eligible to vote in Pennsylvania has 7 days to challenge a candidate's constitutional qualifications in state court after they register.
Wow.
So you need to know when it is, and trust me, those two organizations know exactly when that's going to be.
They know.
And they'll be jumping in there during that 7-day window. Even after all those issues I just described, there are still infinite bullshit reasons that courts can come up with to not rule on these kinds of things when they don't want to rule.
Yep.
For example, Alan Keyes was a candidate against Obama. And he,
I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, he's a crazy dude. He
Yes.
tried to challenge Obama on birtherism grounds, and courts just wouldn't let him. Even though he definitely had standing, he had skin in the game, all the rest of it. He challenged Obama in heaps of states, and he got nowhere because they just came up with bullshit reasons.
It has been a long time since I thought about Alan Keyes.
I think it's been a long time since there's anyone thought of Alan Keyes.
Because he was also from Illinois, right?
He was.
Yeah.
It was the Senate election.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so there are a million pretexts that courts can use to not rule on this kind of thing if they want to avoid it.
Yeah.
If you're interested in this question, and I think if you're interested in the 14th Amendment at all, you should definitely read this. I've got 2 articles I'm putting in the blurb. Both I'm going to put it in the descriptor of the audio podcast and in the blurb for YouTube and for Facebook if you just open it underneath the description there. I would recommend you read both of them. They're one of them is extremely long, but it's the most thorough I've seen on this issue.
Okay.
So if you care, don't ask me about it, just read.
And neither of these are the 126-page UPenn law review.
No.
That has been open in my browser now for 3 weeks.
God bless you, Dave.
Yeah. And I have not looked at a word of it.
No. But importantly, both these are pre that.
Yes.
Because this is all before we even get to the merits. All of these are before we get to the merits. If the Supreme Court wants to rule on the merits, then we get to the 126-page document. But if they don't want to, and I'm assuming they won't want to, then there's a million different tricks they can employ, and that's what these articles are about.
Yeah.
So I just want to just raise that. Okay, just one more, by the way. Let's say it gets to court.
Yeah.
One more particular reason they can use to not rule on the merits is, did you know that there were amnesty statutes enacted by 2/3 majority of Congress in 1872 and 1898 to supposedly defang the 14th Amendment, Section 3?
Oh, yes.
I'll read you the quote. The 1898 amnesty said,
Yes.
The disability imposed by Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States heretofore incurred is hereby removed.
Yes.
So does that mean it doesn't apply anymore at all? Most lawyers I've seen, in fact, in those articles I just told you, say they don't think that's a very good argument.
Right.
But it could be relied on by a judge who doesn't want to rule on it. There's lots of pretext, basically. Okay. So it was Coy Griffin, the New Mexico County Commissioner.
Right. Okay.
Who's the guy who got done. It was in June last year. Okay. So do you have anything to say about the 14th Amendment, or is that fine?
That's fine.
Okay. I want to do a quick Stats Nugget. This is I just read this off a New York Times article. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I just thought it was interesting. I just read it like a minute before the podcast, so I thought I'd bring it to the podcast. This is from the Guttmacher Institute, which are the guys who do the abortion numbers. First 6 months of 2020 abortion numbers versus first 6 months of 2023 abortion numbers. The reason why it's 2020 versus 2023 is because of restrictions. A lot of restrictions that took place in between those two times. Obviously, COVID is a factor, but people are also getting pregnant still.
Yes.
So you think of all the industries to still exist, abortion would have been up there.
Yes. Yeah.
511,000 abortions in the first 6 months of this year versus 465,000 abortions in the first 6 months of 2020 before all these restrictions came in. Abortion rose in pretty much every state where abortion wasn't cracked down on.
Yes, I saw that.
Yep. The change was most visible in states bordering those with total abortion bans.
Not surprising.
Which is not a surprise. The one with the biggest jump up was Illinois, which saw abortions rise 69%. Illinois is, of course, next to Kentucky and Missouri, where there aren't lots of abortions going on.
Yes.
So,
it doesn't directly border Kentucky, but it's fairly
pretty close. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No,
Just an interesting little nugget.
very predictable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's not a surprise. Okay. All right. I'd like to. I've flagged this for so long now. I'd like to talk about Supreme Court ethics.
Yes.
Yes.
Finally, let's do it.
Finally. Okay. All right. So I talked with Melina and all the other Supreme Court staff. Before we get into the ethics, can I just say something I didn't say with Melina, which I just wanted to say, is I forgot to mention with her that no matter what we say about the Supreme Court and whether, like I was running the argument the Supreme Court aren't nearly as bad as people make out. essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the which that's my view. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Don't really agree, but we can talk about that another time.
That's okay. No worries. But regardless of how you feel, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't reform the Supreme Court. And in particular, term limits, which I'm obsessed with.
Yeah, yeah.
Like term limits is not going to solve partisanship to the extent that it exists. But what will solve is having geezers who can barely can barely do their own work being Supreme Court because they don't want to be replaced by someone of a different partisan leaning, and it will also stop presidents choosing infants as their justices to try and get the maximum possible squeeze out of them over 40 years or whatever. And I think both of those are actually two massive problems of Supreme Court.
Huge problems, yes.
So like it just seems obvious an 18-year term limit.
Yeah.
It's just such an obvious thing to do. And so every president then gets 2 Supreme Court justices. Simple.
Yeah.
Anyway. Do you have any reforms you'd like for the Supreme Court? Just a question without notice before we move on.
No.
Let's talk ethics.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's start with Clarence Thomas. It all begins with Clarence Thomas.
Yes.
He's got a billionaire mate called Harlan Crow, who given him a lot. Him and Harlan Crow seem to be great mates.
Yes.
Old Harlan gave Clarence a $500,000 Indonesian vacation on a private jet and a super yacht. When I say $500,000 Indonesian vacation, I mean I don't think he saved him $500,000, but just the it seems like a lot of money to me.
It's the sticker price. Well, private jets are expensive.
Yeah. I think it's got to be a sticker price.
The private jet component of that alone could have been like $300,000.
And I reckon the super yacht's probably right up there as well.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Anyway, he actually gave Clarence Thomas luxury trips every year for 2 decades. Clarence Thomas has taken at least 38 destination vacations as gifts, including a previously unreported voyage on a yacht around the Bahamas, 26 private jet flights, plus an additional 8 by helicopter, a dozen VIP passes to professional and college sporting events, usually in the skybox, and 2 stays at luxury resorts in Florida and Jamaica.
Yes.
By contrast, I have taken 1 vacation since my honeymoon in 2006, and that was to an Airbnb in Newcastle. I need to meet Harlan Crow.
Wow.
Harlan Crow also paid for Clarence Thomas's a relative to go to a private school, which was $6,000 a month. Also bought a house from Clarence's mum, renovated it and let her stay there rent-free. And neither of those gifts was declared. The weirdest gift from Harlan Crow was a painting. Have you seen the painting?
No.
Okay, let me show you the painting, Dave. Dave, this is the first time Dave's seen this painting.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, I'd like you to describe what you're seeing right now.
Oh, God. The statue is the weirdest element.
Yeah, so we got 5 billionaires with a statue of a Native American who I must presume is a billionaire.
Yeah.
Because he's in this painting, but I didn't know that I had old Native American billionaires.
Look, at least it wasn't one of his... some piece of Nazi memorabilia, because he is a big collector of Nazi memorabilia, which he says he does to remind himself of the horrors of dictatorship. And
never forget, Dave.
Yeah, that he collects memorabilia associated with all these other dictators as well, but most people think that's a little bit weird. But actually, I have seen this before. Yes, just sitting around with a cigar, having a conversation about deep legal issues.
No, they never talk about deep legal issues, Dave. You're about to find that out.
Oh, really? They're not talking about deep legal issues. But they look really serious. What else could they be talking about?
Maybe they're talking about Nazi memorabilia and how we should never forget.
Who's got what the best piece in the collection is.
To be fair, this painting of... Oh, you can see it, by the way, if you're watching the podcast. You can see it if you're listening to the podcast, then you can
is this at the retreat? The all-men's club called the Bohemian Grove?
I don't know.
Because that I found was the funniest detail of all of this. There's this all-men's club called, I think it's the Bohemian Grove or the Bohemian Club or something, where I assume they just go and do this.
This is a pretty small grove. It's as I say, it's five kindred spirits hanging around a statue of a Native American who's... I don't know, he's just won a boxing match like Rocky or something.
Yes, yeah.
And they're having a good time. I've got to say, technically, it's a great painting. I mean, it looks almost AI. It's such a good painting. I mean, their hands are better than AI, but otherwise, like that's not a photo. That's a painting.
Yeah.
Like it's a pretty good painting.
Technically, if your criteria for a good painting
it's
is
photorealistic,
that doesn't mean it's a good painting.
Oh, okay. Oh, Mr. Art Critic. That's all right. Okay, it's not Van Gogh. Fine. But yeah, I couldn't do that.
Why do you want a painting that looks like a photo? Why wouldn't you actually just get a photo?
Yeah, I suppose.
Like the idea of a painting is it's supposed to, add something.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, sorry, I'm way out of my depth.
Maybe the photo didn't have the Indian,
way
the Native
out
American
of my depth
there.
here, but yeah.
That's what they added. Anyway, okay.
I don't like photorealistic paintings. I think that they're a waste of time.
That's okay. There's that gift as well. Although Harlan Crow held on to that, so it's a gift to humanity rather than to Clarence Thomas. I did try and spend some time trying to think of some wordplay. Like at least on the elevator down to the record today, I tried to think of some wordplay based on this painting, and the best I could come up was Magalangelo. If you can do better, just put in the comments. Anyway, so there's that as well. Now, and there's also it's not Harlan Crow. He's got other great friends who are billionaires, like this dude called Huizinga, who sent his personal 737 to pick Thomas up and bring him to South Florida at least twice, which, as you say, if Thomas chartered the jet from DC himself, the 5-hour trip would have been $130,000.
Yes,
so you're right about the $500,000 thing.
Yeah.
And then another billionaire, Anthony Walters, lent Thomas money for his $267,000 motor coach. He won't say if he forgave the debt or what terms that loan was on. Now, I should say that's all straight from a PBS report. PBS did a bunch of reports on this. There are some factual disputes from the Thomas camp on this, and he does have a camp, let me assure you.
Oh, yes.
A camp with a Native American, apparently, statue. But Thomas denies, number one, ever seeing one of the yachts that ProPublica accuses him of using. Mm-hmm. That may be true. He says he went on another boat. He says it was for a 30-minute tour and the boat never left the dock. Okay, all right, maybe.
Yeah.
He disputes a number of ProPublica's accusations. He said that they said he got a prestigious invite for a membership to a golf club, and he said that's true. I didn't accept the prestigious invite, though. He also says that the $40,000 corporate skybox they talked about for a football game is what the skybox costs for a year, but his seat in the skybox costs $65.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, fine. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
I'll give him all of them. He's also got some clerks in the camp staying up for him. He's got this letter from 112 clerks accusing his attackers of actually launching a larger attack on the court and its legitimacy. And then they're saying this is all pretext. They describe Justice Thomas as a man of greatest intellect, of greatest faith, and of greatest patriotism. Just so you know.
That might be true. It's completely irrelevant to the fact that he's also the greatest vacation taker of all time.
That is exactly my response.
Yes.
Harlan Crow says he never sought to influence Thomas on any case, and that may well be true. In fact, none of those billionaires I described had any business before the court under Clarence Thomas. So we should put that down. Yeah, that's fair enough. Thomas also says he was following existing ethics guidelines at the time. He says, quote, early in my tenure at the court, I sought guidance from my colleagues and others in the judiciary and was advised this sort of personal hospitality from close personal friends who did not have business before the court was not reportable. Harlan and Kathy Crow are amongst our dearest friends. We've been friends for over 25 years.
Yeah.
As friends do, we have joined them on a number of family trips during the more than quarter century we've known them. Okay, fine. I'm happy to give them benefit down all of that.
Yes.
But even though it is true that the guidelines were a little bit grey on extending personal hospitality at their property.
Yes.
That you don't have to declare that when people extend personal hospitality at their property.
Right.
I think a chartered jet, private jet, is not extending personal hospitality at your property.
But what if the charter jet is your property?
Well, I still don't think that counts. I think that's very slippery, Dave. I think that's against the spirit of these guidelines. You're taking literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of trips.
Yeah.
And because you say it's their property.
But what if you use your charter jet so much that you consider it like a second home?
What if? What if, Dave?
So you're just-
that might be the next defense, Dave. That
It
might
could be. Yeah. I should be getting paid for these legal advice.
Yeah. Anyway, look, Thomas has put out another disclosure, added the disclosures, because they've actually even cracked down those guidelines I just described.
Yes.
They've defined it further since then. There's new guidelines which are harsher, so now he's put out additional disclosures in which he uses the word inadvertently 16 times. It gives you a sense of the tone.
Inadvertently, yeah.
Okay, so and there's a bunch of Dems calling for his resignation.
Oh, dear.
Ilhan Omar, Richard Blumenthal,
Whoa.
Ed Markey, Ro Khanna, etc.
Yeah.
Look, to be fair, I'm not trying to necessarily slam Thomas, because I actually do believe him when he says, like, these people did not have business before the court.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean the system shouldn't suck.
No.
Yeah, like it should have a better system than that. Okay, so now he's not the one I got the biggest problem with.
Who have you
Oh,
got?
I should say, sorry, the new guidance clarifies personal hospitality does not include gifts other than food, lodging, or entertainment. So food, lodging, or entertainment, you don't have to disclose.
Mm-hmm.
Transportation that substitutes for commercial transportation, you
Yeah,
absolutely do.
That actually does seem like
Yeah.
something you should disclose.
Exactly. And explicitly states that stays at property or facilities owned by an entity must be disclosed even if they're owned wholly or in part by an individual. Okay, so that loophole's closed. Now, the guy I've got a problem with is Alito.
Yeah.
I got a problem with him. He also had a vacation paid for by a billionaire, Paul Singer. It included flying on Singer's private jet, don't they all, to Alaska, and then staying for free in a fishing lodge that cost $1,000 a night.
I remember this one.
He also didn't disclose this one. Difference between him and Thomas is that Singer had at least 10 cases before the court over the ensuing years. And Alito ruled in his favour a lot. Now, Alito's defence, once again, is way shoddier than Thomas's defence. Like Thomas's defence, you can believe or not believe, but at least to go, okay.
Yep.
I can see the cracks that he's hanging around in.
Yep.
Alito, okay. He just, first of all, he wanted to make a big point about not the hundreds of thousands of dollars on the jet flight that he took, but the accommodation that cost $1,000 a night.
Yeah.
He insists it was a modest one-room unit in a comfortable rustic facility. An examination of the photos and information on the lodge's website shows that ProPublica's portrayal is misleading. Furthermore, he said about that jet flight, Mr. Singer and others had already made arrangements to fly to Alaska when I was invited shortly before the event, and I was asked whether I would like to fly there in a seat that, as far as I'm aware, would have otherwise been vacant. It was my understanding that this would not impose any extra cost on Mr. Singer. Had I taken commercial flights, that would have imposed a substantial cost and inconvenience on the deputy US Marshals who would have been required for security reasons to assist me. He did it all for the deputy US Marshals and for America.
Saving America money.
What a patriot Alito is. Obviously, it doesn't matter whether Singer paid for it or not. If it's Singer's plane, he's not paying for it at all. The question is, are you taking something of considerable value and then declaring it from someone who you're going to sit in judgment on? That's the question. Oh, by the way, he wasn't finished. Alito also said, quote, on no occasion have we discussed the activities of business, and we have never talked about any case or issue before the court. This is the guy who he had 10 cases in front of. So you don't need to talk about the case when you are judging him.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That is a bit of a
He's
problem.
meant to be a judge. Use some judgment, Alito. Anyway. And then the other thing is, if they're meant to be such good friends, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If they're such good friends, then why didn't he recuse himself in the case, which you're meant to do when they are your good friend?
Yes, yeah.
And if they're not your good friend,
Yes.
then why are you taking vacations from them?
Yes.
Because that sounds like
You
bribery.
got him there.
It's one or the other.
Yes, yeah.
So anyway.
Oh, well. I'm confident there'll be absolutely no consequences for him.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Yes,
No
yeah.
doubt about that. Oh, by the way, I'm not finished with Alito.
Yeah.
Because it then went on.
Yes.
I'll go out of order here because let's finish with Alito before I do the other
Yeah,
stuff.
by the way, I just love the Alaskan fishing lodge was a modest one
I
room.
know.
one-room unit. Like,
But that doesn't even contradict ProPublica. You can have a modest one-room unit in Alaska that costs $1,000 a night.
Exactly.
It's the location that you pay for.
Exactly. Yes, it's a valuable thing. You know,
not the bar
I
fridge.
was staying in a futuristic wonderland in Los Angeles that had everything. It had a digital clock radio. It had electricity that sometimes worked. But it certainly didn't cost $1,000 a night.
No. Anyway, okay, so this is the other thing I hate about Alito.
Yes.
My other grievance of Alito.
Yeah.
All those quotes which I just described.
Yeah.
They all came from an interview conducted with a lawyer who has a major case before him coming up in court as well in the Wall Street Journal. That case is Moore versus US, which is also about taxing rich people's wealth, which I imagine some of Alito's mates would care about. So that's pretty unethical as well. He's getting interviewed by people who are going to prosecute cases and represent cases in front of him in the not too distant future. And in it, but this is even worse.
Yeah.
In it, he said his ethics cannot be regulated. Quote, Congress did not create the Supreme Court. I know this is a controversial view, but I'm willing to say it. No provision in the Constitution gives them the authority to regulate the Supreme Court. Period, he says. And that just makes no sense at all.
Doesn't make any sense.
Like, I mean, common sense suggests that's not true because without congressional legislation, the Supreme Court would have one judge, it'd have no budget, it'd have no building, have no staff.
Yeah.
In fact, Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution specifically says the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and to fact, with such exceptions and, quote, under such regulations as the Congress shall make.
There, it's right there in the Constitution.
You'd think he would know that, being a Supreme Court justice.
I would never assume that.
Anyway, we'll come back to that in a second. But Alito sucks. That's the conclusion I want you to draw there.
Yes, yeah.
Do you have anything to say about Thomas and Alito before I move on?
No.
I might have said it all.
Yes, I think you've said it all.
Okay. Now, those are the people who have problems with disclosure, but even the guys who do disclose have got their own problems.
Okay, yep.
Like Open Secrets reckons, since 2004, Supreme Court judges have disclosed 1,309 subsidized trips. It's a lot of subsidized trips. Breyer took 225, Scalia took 258. Scalia was on one when he died.
Really?
That's one way to draw attention to an issue.
Wow.
Yes. Ruth Bader Ginsburg took a trip to Israel, compliments of a billionaire who had won a case in front of the court less than a year earlier. She did disclose it, but still, it'd be better if they didn't do this kind of thing, you know? Neil Gorsuch had been trying for some time in 2017 to unload a 40-acre property he had co-owned in Colorado. 9 days after he was confirmed to the Supreme Court, the property was purchased by the CEO of a law firm that had numerous cases pending before the court.
Yeah, this does all look very bad.
And whose clients Gorsuch has sided with much more often than not. Gorsuch disclosed that he made between $250,000 and $500,000 off that sale. But he left blank the box that would have informed the public of the identity of the person who paid the money. And it goes on. Like Sonia Sotomayor doesn't have the same conflicts of interest, but she's been doing weird, like her staff pressure institutions where she speaks to buy loads of her books, which is kind of small fry. But just throw it in there.
I love how small fry it is.
She did make $3.7 million from those books, but I don't think it's from the speaking engagements. Anyway, I'm just trying to be exhaustive here, right?
Yes, yeah.
But, and then all this is happening, by the way, while the Supreme Court is defining down what corruption means.
Yes.
Like, there was the case with McDonnell.
Yeah.
Where they defined it down to like where getting paid lots of bribes is no longer corrupt as long as you can't specifically show an official act that they performed in return for those bribes.
Yes.
So, like while they're getting all this filthy lucre, they're defining down corruption. It's just not great, you know?
No.
To be honest, I reckon I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt again. I doubt that this affected their rulings a lot. These people are ideological.
Yes, absolutely.
Like their social and ideological circles they move in are a much bigger deal than gifts.
Yeah.
But, I wish it was that easy to sway a Supreme Court justice. But having said that, we can't ignore the research.
No.
Because there's a lot of research in this. And it sounds like I did just ignore the research, but I'm going to say it now. Because, there's a lot of this with doctors in the past.
Yes.
Doctors getting pens, getting mouse pads, getting really tiny gifts. Not multi-$100,000 jet trips.
Yeah.
Like private jet trips, but pens.
Yes.
Right? And like in mugs.
Yeah.
It worked.
It's enough.
There's research on it. It worked.
Because in the case of doctors, it's a heuristic.
Yeah.
Like when you've got complicated decisions to make, not a lot of time to make them.
Yeah.
You know, you're choosing between a lot of different products potentially. Well, who's the one who gave you a pen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the research showed that even one meal from a pharmaceutical rep resulted in doctors prescribing more of their pricier promoted drugs.
Yeah.
And like as you say, it's not just keeping them top of mind, but also it's just in front of you. It just reminds you.
Yeah.
You know, like just that. I should say as well, doctors like judges
Yeah.
insisted that they weren't influenced by these kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah.
The research showed that they were.
Yes.
Those same doctors said, "Oh, other doctors are. I'm not."
Yeah.
In the same way as Alito and Thomas are saying
Yes,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And to be fair to the pharmaceutical companies, they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
When this research came out, the pharmaceutical companies stopped doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
They just spent $700 million on lobbying in 2 years instead. But that's from this week's Planet America. That's why I remember it.
Okay.
Against the Medicare, the Medicare negotiations. Okay, so even though, my heart tells me they're probably not influenced.
Yeah.
My brain tells me they must be because the research suggests it. Okay, so what are your thoughts? What should we do about this?
I don't know.
I mean, because it's a problem because disclosure, as I said, is not the problem.
No.
I mean, Alito and Thomas were dodgy with disclosure. Alito
Yes.
especially.
Yeah, yeah.
But if he just the problem with Alito was recusal.
Yeah.
Not disclosure. And as we've established with Protasewicz, I think that was the name.
Yes.
They're in charge of their own recusals.
Yeah.
So the Congress can't pass a law
Yeah.
to make them recuse. Or maybe they can. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. But if that's possible, I'd like to see that.
Yes.
At the very least. But what I would say is the Supreme Court is the only federal court not bound by an ethics standard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Every other judge is. And people want it. There was Harry Enton had a funny little stat in CNN that a UMass Amherst poll, after the Thomas story broke, 90% said Supreme Court justices should have a formal code of ethics like other federal courts.
Yeah.
10% didn't. Harry Enton notes that 10% is the same percentage of Americans who believe NASA faked the moon landing. so there you go. Okay.
That 10% is also probably the number of Americans who've been giving Clarence Thomas stuff.
That's
That's the number of Americans whose properties Clarence Thomas has vacationed on.
yeah. I was going to say 10% is the number of trips that Harlan Crow goes on his jet that don't have Clarence Thomas on them. That's what 10% is. Anyway, I told you about Alito and how he thinks that they can't be regulated at all. I tell you why that's garbage. Let me also tell you that Eleanor Kagan disagrees with Alito.
Ah.
Quote, it just can't be that the court is the only institution that somehow is not subject to checks and balances from anybody else. We're not imperial.
Yeah.
Thank you. Of course, Congress can regulate various aspects of what the Supreme Court does. Congress funds the Supreme Court. Congress historically has made changes to the court's structure and composition. Congress has made changes to the court's appellate jurisdiction. Yes. Roberts also spoke about this recently. He said, I want to assure people that I'm committed to making certain that we as a court adhere to the highest standards of conduct. We continue to look at things we can do to give practical effect to that commitment, and I'm confident that there are ways to do that consistent with our status as an independent branch of government and the Constitution's separation of powers. I don't hear him suggesting that Congress should pass a law.
No.
So, look, that's all I have to say about this. I just wanted to note that if Congress do pass a law, the people who would judge whether that law is constitutional
Yes.
are the Supreme Court judges.
Yes.
Which is its own issue.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
As you say, though, I think term limits are a very important part.
Term limits would sort out a lot of this as well.
Well, yeah, because, and I would actually make them shorter than 18 years.
What would you make them? 9?
9. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. 9 judges, 9 years each. Because even with 18 years, you've still got people then who would be pretty incentivized to make these kinds of long-term investments in justices. But yeah,
actually, I mean, you know what? You've actually convinced me on that. Like, I think 9 actually probably does make more sense. It would solve so many problems.
let's go with 9.
Let's go with
That's
9.
the PEP plan.
That's the PEP solution.
for reform of the Supreme Court.
Dave, I want to talk to you about religion.
Yes.
Like now you read the article.
I did read the article.
I'm sure that that is paywalled. So I'm going to.
Yes.
If you look in the comments of our Facebook video,
yes, yep.
you will find that comment. You'll find that article pasted in there. I probably should not do that every week. I'm going to get busted one of these days.
Yes, yeah.
But it's a really interesting article about religion, and this is your specialty. So I wanted to see what you thought about it.
Yes, yeah.
Do you want to talk to it, or do you want me to set it up? Or?
Can you just describe the article?
Okay, all right, okay. Basically, there's a PRRI poll that says only 54% of Christian nationalists, just 42% of those who are sympathetic with Christian nationalism attend church regularly. Mm-hmm. Now, which is much higher than the general population, which is 28%.
Yep.
But basically, half of Christian nationalists don't go to church.
Yes.
But what the article posited is that researchers in this area and academics are speculating that not going to church doesn't make you be less Christian nationalist.
Yes, yeah.
It actually makes you a more extremist Christian nationalist.
Yes.
And the article went into various reasons why, which you may talk about.
Yep.
If you don't, I'll bring them up. But that's to set up what essentially the article posits. So take it away.
Now, this is absolutely in accord with academic research.
Yeah.
That people who, and it does make the point as well, that people who stop going to liberal churches remain liberals. People who stop going to conservative churches remain conservatives. If there's going to be any long-term political effect from people's religious habits changing, it's going to be a generational thing. And the effects are going to take a long time to be visible. So it sort of hinted at people who are no longer going to church, described them as unmoored. And I think that's very true. And his term, the country's politics becomes their church. Also, for a lot of them, I think media becomes the major, substitute for where they're getting their information. Something I would suggest that he did not go into explicitly, although he might have hinted at it, is actually that even in conservative churches, clergy are often a moderating factor. A lot of what people found quite surprising thing about evangelicals flocking to Trump was that at least in 2016, at least during the primaries, their clergy were not telling them to go to Trump. Evangelical clergy, for the most part, were behind more solidly evangelical candidates like Cruz or Rubio. Now, a lot of them did then get on board with Trump later on, and there was a faction of clergy, especially Pentecostal clergy, who were always on board with Trump. But nonetheless, and if we look at clergy now in the United States, a lot of them do not like Christian nationalism. A lot of conservative evangelical clergy do not like Christian nationalism. This was something that was discussed at a couple of panels that I went to at the American Political Science Association last week. Part of the whole Trump rebellion for evangelicals was, they're pissed off with all sources of authority, including their own clergy, right? Including their own church leadership, who they see as pointlessly moralizing rather than getting in the fight that they want to see. The thing about clergy is, for the most part, ultimately their interest is in the kingdom of God. Their interest is in making sure that their flock are good Christians. It's keeping people's attention on the gospel. It's keeping people's attention on the message of Christ. Now, even if that's all very conservative versions of that, that's still moderate compared to the highly politicized Christian nationalist message that you get from right-wing media and politics. So the more time that people are actually spending in church, that's actually potentially more exposure to moderating influences that they're getting. Now, that is certainly not universally true, because there are a lot of churches which are just full-blown MAGA at this point, especially on the Pentecostal side of the equation. But certainly for a lot of evangelicals, if they were actually staying in church, they would potentially be exposed to more moderating influences from clergy who, even if they agree with Trump, would vote for Trump, they they don't want it to be all about Trump. They actually want it to be about Christianity. And the problem that a lot of clergy are actually having is that that's not what their congregations want to hear. Their congregations want all MAGA all the time. Although, on the other hand, there are apparently quite a lot of evangelical churches now that are increasingly catering towards people who might vote for Trump but don't want all MAGA all the time, and are disturbed by Christian nationalism. So I can definitely see that, leaving church is not a sign that you are leaving Christian nationalism. It might actually be, you might be going more into its mouth.
Yeah. I was going to say that the article also suggested, you mentioned the moderating effect of the clergy. They also mentioned the moderating effect of the other parishioners.
Yes,
there's a wide variety of people who turn up in the church.
Yeah, that's also possible. And I do think that that kind of physical contact with other people, you're more likely to be getting moderating influences than you are if you're just settling down to a media diet of, One American News Network or whatever.
Yeah. Another thing which the article noted is that a lot of Christian churches, even the nationalist ones, do some kind of charity work.
Yes.
And that by getting involved in charity work, that by its nature allows you to have exposure to other kinds of people, unfortunate people in particular.
Yes, yeah.
Which might help as well. The other point that the article made, which I thought was interesting, was, as you say, there are people not going to church in the north as well as the south. And what's happening is both sides are losing the language that used to be a common language in churches. That and so there's less means of communication between bubbles. That there used to be as well, which I thought was interesting as well.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this the other day because there was a very interesting book whose name I can't remember. But it was about the doctrine of original sin in the mid-20th century. And it was pointing out that these major figures who were, Christian leaders with followings of millions who are also public intellectuals, and it talks about Reinhold Niebuhr, Paul Tillich, and Billy Graham, all from very different parts of the political spectrum, but they all actually had the common preoccupation with original sin, which is something that has subsequently disappeared across the across the political spectrum. So there is a kind of there's certainly a binding language that is disappearing. Yes.
Do you have anything else to add on that?
No.
Okay, now we actually normally we really moved fast during this one.
We did.
Yeah,
have we actually got to the end?
Well, we got to the edge of my preparation.
Wow.
I was halfway through preparing the next
of Chaz's preparation, and we've got about 7 minutes to go.
Yeah, about 10, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah. So look, I'm gonna do my best to fumble my way through this last section.
Okay.
But I normally don't get even close to the end of my preparation. Yep. But we are at the edge of the universe, as it were. And it's now time for Pourri.
It's been years since we've done this.
I know.
Absolute years.
Weeks, but yeah.
Okay.
First one is a work from home poll. It's a Bloomberg survey, I believe.
Yep. You know how much we respect Michael Bloomberg on this podcast.
I think he did it himself. He conducted this himself.
Yeah.
In July, office occupancy in Asia was 79%. In Europe, it was 75%.
Yeah.
In America, it was 48%. It's really interesting.
I used to live near Detroit, where I'm pretty sure office occupancy was 5%.
Yes.
If that.
Well,
there were skyscrapers with trees growing out of them in Detroit.
Well, like I Am Legend.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, I don't know about Detroit, but it's apparently a bit of an, I don't have the stats here, but I've just read a few articles about it being a bit of an issue in middle cities that there's a lot of, not so much the big cities.
I was reading about how St. Louis is a ghost town now, because a lot of these places actually had real estate booms, not that long ago, like 15 years ago. So a lot of commercial real estate was built, which is now sitting empty.
Yeah, and the reason that's such a big problem is because these cities, almost all their income comes from basically the taxes they place on businesses
Yep.
in their city, in their CBD.
Yes, yeah.
And if you're a big city, like say, for instance, New York, then as if there's a few skyscrapers empty, that's not a big problem.
Yeah.
But if you're a small city and that's all you got,
Yes, yeah.
then all of a sudden you can't afford to pay for your
Yep,
services.
absolutely,
And
yes.
so that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
So for certainly St. Louis, Cleveland, places like that, it is. Yeah, it's a problem.
yeah. So anyway, that's the first poll.
Yep.
Second one, college. Okay, we're really getting to the bleeding edge of my preparation here. Okay, so back in 2013,
Yes.
lots of people liked college.
Yes. Oh, I saw this report.
It's,
This by Paul Tuff. Is that his real name?
Paul Tuff. It
the
might
New
be.
York Times?
This is from the New York Times.
Yeah. This is Paul Tuff. Yes. Yeah. I saw this report.
Yeah. Okay. Well, get ready to comment on it.
Yeah.
96% of parents who identified as Democrats said they expected their kids to attend college. 99% of Republican
That's
parents
right, yes.
expect their kids to go to college.
Yeah.
That's not the case now.
No.
Almost half of American parents say now they prefer their children not to enroll in a 4-year college. In terms of the kids themselves, back in 2013, 74% of young adults said a college education was very important. Now it's 41%. What do you think the ramifications of that are, Dr. Dave?
Well, a huge part of this is awareness of the cost of college in the United States, which even during the time that I've been familiar with it has just got up to astronomical amounts, especially when you compare it with a generation or 2 generations ago, when it really was supposed to be something affordable and it was heavily subsidized by state governments. A lot of that subsidization has gone, but even private universities are way more expensive than they used to be, and it is getting to the point where given the way that debt compounds, it actually might not be a good investment anymore. Like there was until fairly recently. The understanding still prevailed that college, no matter how expensive it was a fundamentally good investment because of the way that it would boost your earning power. But that's not an endlessly flexible equation. If you raise the cost too much, and Tuff goes into this, that you actually might be worse off.
Just before you go on,
yes,
I just want to interrupt for a second. Can you just remind people what your job is?
I'm an assistant. No, sorry. What? My brain. Where the fuck is my brain today? I'm an associate professor.
It wasn't a trick question. You work at a university.
Yes. Yeah.
This is why you can trust PEP. We are independent even from ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Keep on going.
By the way, I work in an Australian university.
Yes.
Now, Australian university, I think that the cost of it is too high for students. I think that the way that it has gone over the last few years, where they just keep raising the costs for students, is too high, especially since Australia, of all the OECD countries, actually has the highest accrual of public benefit to private benefit, the highest ratio from universities. So I think that that's too high. Nonetheless, at least in Australia, it is still paid off through a system which is linked to income. It's paid off through tax. And it is linked to inflation, but it doesn't accumulate interest in the way that so it's still a far less kind of savage system. But I think even for Australians, the way that the cost is increasing is, prompting people to reevaluate. And I think it's something that we need to do something about it in Australia. But the situation is beyond absurd in the United States, and as we have talked about in previous podcasts in previous years, college is a particularly bad deal if you don't finish.
Yes.
Right. What you really need out of college is the degree, if you are going to realize the economic benefits from it. And large numbers of people don't finish for all kinds of reasons, because the period of people's lives when they go to college is a period of significant personal upheaval, and when often people's decision making abilities are very different from what they will be in the future. People often don't have that much time to really think about these huge decisions that they're making. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't finish college, and if you don't, it's a particularly bad economic deal for you. So that, I think, is the major reason behind all of this. There is the political side to it as well, which there has, there's just been this really sustained attack on higher education from Republicans for a long time, which I think is beginning to take its toll. That's despite the fact the overwhelming number of Americans who are enrolled in four-year colleges are enrolled in STEM programs. There's actually very few people, or I mean, not very few, it's still in the millions, but relatively few people enrolled in the kinds of arts programs, which are the ones that attract all the attention about how horrifically woke American colleges, supposedly are. So I think that the politics of it is beginning to take its toll, and you do see that reflected a bit in those numbers. But I really think it's the economics that is the most significant factor.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, this last one I've really got very little preparation on.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try. For those who are watching the video, you could see me typing away while Dave was talking now. I was trying to get this prepared.
Yes.
This one's about the actually, before I do that, just a really quick one from New York Times. 45%, this is from about 3 weeks ago, 45% of Democrats said that they want to renominate Biden. 50% said they didn't want to renominate Biden. Mm-hmm. That was presented as a concern for Biden.
Yep.
But I couldn't help noticing a year ago in the exact same poll, it was 26% of Democrats who want to renominate Biden.
No, just because they don't want to doesn't mean that they won't. Like, they've got no choice.
Yeah, and those numbers are going up. So anyway, so there's that. The non-white working class is the topic at hand here.
Oh, yes. You said you were going to talk about this.
Yeah, I want to talk about this briefly. And I'm not going to do it properly because, number one, short on time. Number two, I haven't fully prepared.
Yeah.
There was a poll that came out this week in the New York Times. Yes, New York Times, where they noted that on average, Biden led Trump by just 53% to 28% amongst registered non-white voters from 2022 to 2023. In 2020, he won more than 70% of the non-white voters. Why is that? Well, they note that overall, he retains a 61 to 23 lead amongst non-white college graduates, but only a 49 to 31 lead amongst non-white non-college graduates. So that's where he's bleeding amongst the non-white working class. Okay, so that we then marry that with the stuff which I had prepared before from like a month ago, which I saw elsewhere. I thought, oh yeah, this is interesting. Which was another New York Times poll about that found that on non-college voters, this might be 6 weeks ago actually, non-college non-white voters, Biden led Trump by 16 points compared to 48 points in 2020. Obama had a 67-point lead on those amongst those voters. Now, the working class voters are 2/3 to 3/4 of the non-white vote. So when we're talking about the college graduates and non-colleges, so let's say about 70% are non-college, and less than a quarter of the non-white working class identify as liberal. So what there seems to be to me is this block, a large block of non-white working class voters who are moderate or conservative, who in the past would have voted Democrat anyway, even though they're conservative.
Yes.
But recently, they might be starting to arrange themselves according to ideology a bit more consistently, and they might be starting to move towards Republicans. And I'll give you some stats on that note. This is a Scal/NORC poll by 61 to 39%. In fact, all these polls I'm about to read, they're all involved in the same thing. They're comparing moderate to conservative non-white working class voters to non-white college graduates who are liberals to white liberals.
Okay.
So white college graduate liberals. Okay. 61 to 39%, moderate to college non-white working class voters chose the view that racism comes from individuals, not society. The opposite for The college graduate non-whites, 78 to 20%. And white college graduate liberals, 82 to 18, the opposite.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's the way it goes. I'll read you out
This sounds
the
like all the stuff David Shaw's been talking about for a long time.
It is. It is. Let me just finish these off quickly. And
Okay, yes, yeah.
So then I'll shortcut it now.
Yeah.
For whether you support full police department funding or not.
Yeah.
Non-white, moderate to conservative working class voters, 63 to 36%. White college graduate liberals, 76 to 22 the other way. Whether sports team participation should be determined by birth gender, 70 to 26%. 70% to 26% moderate to conservative non-whites are going the conservative way. White college graduate liberals 40 points the other way.
Yeah.
You get the idea.
Yeah. Look,
I can keep on going.
I can't ever hear any of these numbers without thinking of the warning that I've been giving to my students, which is when you're getting numbers from a nationally representative poll
Slicing and dicing.
of 1,000 people, the non-white component is going to be, 30% at best. Then you're beginning to divide them up into class categories.
Yep.
So you're looking at maybe 200 people and trying to make inferences from that. Now, admittedly, if you see a whole bunch of polls where they're all going in the same direction, you might have a bit more confidence. But those comparisons of, these recent New York Times polls with the numbers that Biden was getting in 2020 and the numbers that Obama was getting, those are much bigger polls that they're talking about. So that's the first first caveat. But the second thing is, because I think that, the last couple of elections have shown a movement. The other thing is this entire category of non-white, I think there's been a lot of movement among Latinos and very little movement among African Americans.
I think it's definitely more amongst Latinos.
Yes.
But there is some amongst blacks.
The second thing is this is very gendered.
Yes, it is.
This is,
Males.
to the extent that there has been a movement, it's been men. But remember that, like, Trump's African American vote went up from something like 6% to 8% in 2016 to 2020, which is obviously not nothing, but it's nothing really electorally consequential.
Yep.
Movement of Latino voters could be more consequential, albeit that is mostly, if Trump's support in California goes up, doesn't matter. If Trump's support in Florida and Texas goes up, also doesn't matter.
True.
Electorally. But the other thing is, the big point that I want to make here is, when we look at when we look at 2008 and 2012, Latino support for Obama was incredibly high. That historically really high for a Democrat. The Latino vote historically has always been about 30 to 40% Republican, and sometimes higher in some contexts. Bush is reputed to have got about 45% of the Latino vote in 2004. As governor of Texas, he was getting higher. It's the same way Ron DeSantis has been able to get 50% of the Latino vote in Florida. The fact is that when we're making these comparisons over the last 20 years of the way that the Latino vote's gone, it's been coming for Republicans from this abysmally low rate. That I think the low that it reached under Romney was like 19% or something, and it's beginning to sort of return to its historical equilibrium. I don't think that, there's all of this, and yes, there is a class element to it as well as a gender element, and there's all of this excitement about building a multiracial working class coalition, et cetera, et cetera. They still haven't shown that they can do better with Latinos and other non-white voters under Trump than they did under Bush. That's the bottom line behind all of this. So if you're looking for a Republican working class future of color, maybe there's evidence for it, but there's not enough evidence for it yet. The other part of the picture, obviously, is Asian American voters, another group which many sections of the Asian American vote leaned Republican before Obama and then went Democratic. Some of them have returned to the Republican Party. The Vietnamese vote has returned to the Republican Party, but although you do make that plays into two of the points you've already made, which is number one,
smaller groups, hard to measure.
Yes.
And secondly, a lot of them live in California.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there might be something going on here, but it looks more like a return to a historical norm rather than anything new. And, it does make it harder for a Democrat to win by the kinds of margins that Obama won by in 2008, but might not be electorally consequential.
I think that sounds right to me. I think that's a very reasonable response. And I think pretty much agree with everything you said. The other thing which I'd throw in there, which I think these guys play down a bit too much in their polls, not so much the social polls I went to at the end, but the ones I started off with when I was talking about the black vote. Look at the undecided vote. It's large.
Yeah.
And a lot of those undecideds may well come back to the Democrats.
Yes, yeah.
So that often what you'll find is that the difference between the Democrat number is just simply there's more undecideds.
Yes.
So we need to suck that and see.
Yeah.
But all I would say is that if there is as I said, I agree with everything you said, but if there is if we look back on this in 10 years' time and we say this was the beginning of a period where, in particular, non-white working class males were moving towards the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Then I think that would end up in an interesting area because I think basically the party is often reflected of the people who vote for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And once Trump's out of the picture, if in another 2 elections or 3 elections, if they had, let's say they had 20% or 25% black males, and 45% Hispanic males, for instance, which I don't think either of them are unrealistic in 10 years or 15 years. I think that would change overnight the way the Republican Party dealt with a lot of these people.
Possibly.
Because I think at the moment they're chasing a majority when they're a minority party.
Yes, yeah.
As soon as they become a majority party, they'll start acting like a majority party.
Maybe.
And I hope if that, I'm not particularly hoping for any particular affiliation, but I would like to see the end of the stupid shit.
Yes, yeah.
And I think when you become a majority, or at least a realistically, potentially majority party, then you stop the stupid shit and you start trying to win elections.
Possibly.
So we'll see.
Yes.
We'll see.
Just finally, the Detroit Lions have defeated the Kansas City Chiefs, last year's Super Bowl winner, 21-20.
Dave, you're gonna make me
Kansas City.
You're gonna make me play this.
It's the Michigan Corner.
Yeah, anyway, since the second half of last season, people have suspected the Lions might be good. Which is historically unusual, but yes, this might be the Lions' year.
It was a short Michigan corner, but it was a sweet one.
Yes.
Any other Michigan-related matters you want to raise, Dave, before we finish up? No problems. Okay. We got to the end of the material.
Excellent.
Even though half the end bit wasn't
First time
prepared.
in 120 episodes.
Incredible. Until next week. You're back next Friday?
Yep.
Okay. See you then. Stay peppy.